from families on the process of returning to school. We've held 2 other forums this week, forums in July, and there's been multiple presentations to the Board of Education on the reopening plans. We also have a dedicated section of midlakes.org on the reopening plan of schools this year. And we continue to accept questions from families submitted through the Midlakes School Facebook page and to the reopening schools at midlakes.org email. I am Todd Clausen, Public Relations Coordinator for the Phelps-Clifton Springs Central School District, and I am serving as moderator of today's community forum. With me on the call right now are Superintendent of Schools, Matt Sickles, Elementary School Principal, Christopher Moyer, Tammy Wood, Director of the Committee on Special Education, and we have our beloved Athletic Director / Safety Coordinator, John Lombardi, on the call. There's been a lot of work going on inside the schools. You know, I'm stationed here at an elementary school. I notice facility staff being busy organizing desks and rearranging things. Matt, can you just provide us a brief update of the work that the facilities crew and the transportation department and really, I mean, I could say everybody, we're talking, you know, a lot of people, a lot of efforts to make sure that school is ready for our opening on September 14th?
Absolutely. And I welcome the other panelists to chime in with some details after I provide the overview. You know, I want to start with the fact that you mentioned getting ready for the start of school on September 14th, not September 8th or 9th for us, but September 14th. We did update the district calendar. The board approved it on Monday night. It is now posted on the website. The first day of instruction for Midlakes students is Monday, September 14th. The first day of reporting for staff is Tuesday, September 8th. Now we'll get into more detail. The one exception is that our 11th and 12th grade CTE students who attend the BOCES Career and Technical Ed programs will start on the 9th in person, and we will provide transportation. We can review that later. But our instruction for the district, whether in person or remote, starts on the 14th. And that was done very deliberately to allow more time for us to prepare for the return of our teachers and for our teachers to prepare for the return of our in-person students as well as our remote students beginning instruction. There are so many things to be done. And you know, we try to reiterate that through the 145-page state ed guidance document and the 23-page Department of Health guidance document and the many updates and clarifications and interpretations we've received in the CDC guidelines. We're in the process of reinventing and redesigning just about every aspect of everything we do. I don't know that there's any part of our daily school routine that isn't being impacted or changed as a result of the COVID-19 health crisis and the reopening guidelines. So right now we have facilities. You mentioned facilities. So John can chime in here in a little bit, but our facilities department is doing a number of things. You know, our rooms are limited in capacity by social distancing guidelines with 6 feet between students. That limits how many students can be in a room. So they're in the process of laying out our rooms with desks according to the 6 feet social distancing guidelines, but then also determining when we need to replace a small room with a larger space to replace the same function. They're undergoing training and planning for how they're going to clean the building in different ways and more frequently during the school day over the course of a week, between cohorts, you know, on Wednesdays, changing from the Monday, Tuesday cohort to the Thursday, Friday cohort. So there's a tremendous amount of work going on the facilities end. Our school nurses are working with John and his team on training, content, and schedules and protocols that'll happen September 8th through the 11th when we're staff only, to make sure that our staff are trained in everything from the identification of COVID-19 symptoms to what do they do, where do they send a kid or another staff member if they recognize a symptom, to how do they adequately and appropriately instruct their students on proper hand washing and respiratory hygiene and etiquette and things like that. Our instructional staff is engaged, as I said, clerical staff, with the subcommittees ranging from attendance procedures to drop off and dismissal. We have an entire committee dedicated to the instructional side of things, in person and remote. Our food service department is preparing for a much different delivery of meals. All meals will be brown bag, whether they're offered here in school to students learning in person or whether they're made available through pickup for students learning remotely. Our transportation department has been integral. They're working with the building principals on creating the cohorts of students. We're starting UPK through third grade in the cohort model. That means each grade level is going to be split in half, with Monday, Tuesday kids and Thursday, Friday kids. Well, that has to be coordinated with transportation so that we have balanced bus loads, because our buses, according to the social distancing guidelines, a 65 passenger bus maxes out at about 22 kids with everybody wearing their mask, and an 81 passenger bus caps out at 27 students. So that significantly limits our bus capacity and changes how we get kids here. And that's a factor that has to be counted into the development of those cohorts. Then, as we prepare for grades 4 through 6 to eventually come back into the hybrid model, Chris and his team need to ensure, with the assistance transportation, that those cohorts are aligned with family consistency to the K-3 cohorts. And then Mr. Bay Rossi, the principal at the secondary building, as we prepare for his students to eventually come back into the hybrid model, he also needs to work with the transportation department and align his cohorts to the 4, 6, and the K-3 so that families have all of their kids in person or at home on the same days, because we understand families need those older kids to help with the younger kids. So there's a million moving parts. We know, we appreciate the patience of our community, our parents, our families. We understand their frustrations because they needed this information yesterday, to say the least, because they have a lot of arrangements to make. So we apologize for the delay, but as Mr. Moyer has said many times, when we send information out, we want it to be right. We want it to be accurate the first time, because we don't want to send information out, have families use it for the purpose of planning, and then call them a week later and say, oops, we have to change it. And now they're in a tailspin because now they're starting from scratch on their arrangement. So that was a long answer, but trying to give you a sense of all the moving parts. I do encourage people to check the school website and the reopening section of the website on a regular basis, because new documents are being uploaded on almost a daily basis. These committees are producing tremendous work. Some of it's quicker than others, some of it's more complicated, but as soon as they have more detail to provide, it gets up on the website. So that truly is a living document or a living source of information that will evolve not just between now and September 14th, but beyond, because we know that we're going to constantly have to reevaluate what we're doing and improve it based upon observational feedback. So I said a lot. Anybody else wants to chime in with details, please.
Before we jump in, you mentioned the website, so let me just see if I can share the screen here and show people where on the website to go. So can you guys see this right now? Yeah, great. So as you can see on, there's a couple sections of the website that we are kind of putting everything on, and we have this main tile here that will link directly to the reopening plan. But there's also a tab on the website, and it's Reopening Midlakes, and you can kind of see where the plan is. There's some highlighted areas. There's some community resources that were pulled together by our PSO staff earlier this year that we've been updated. We have a fact sheet on some of the details as they relate to the reopening plan. Also some safety tips and some other areas. So just in a spot where families can go and check out, what we have on the website, visit that often. We'll share it to social media. We also have an area where all of our virtual presentations, the board meetings, where there have been discussions on the reopening plan, the virtual forums, our town halls back in July. So we're going to have quite a few different presentations and things to share with families. Chris, I know you had a committee meeting earlier this morning. Matt was just talking about a little bit about transportation and arrival. What color can you provide to families? What it's going to look like? You don't have to get into everything. I know some things are still coming together, but just arrival times and sons and daughters coming on campus for the first time.
So when it comes to just the idea of arrival times, if obviously for a kindergarten parent you don't have that set idea of what that looks like, but all other parents do. And what we've tried to do is keep our timing as close to what we normally would do, normal other years. And with that in mind, what's our goal? Our goal is to get back into our buildings full time every day, somewhere, sometime, somehow. So the more normal we can make our arrival to what that will look like, the better it is for our students. So we don't have to keep revisiting and reteaching. So we're looking at our buses coming in at roughly 8:40. We will be unloading those buses per guidance. Buses, unfortunately, as Matt was referring to earlier, we have regulations we have to follow, and our buses need to be loaded from back to front for social distancing purposes. So people aren't in close relation to each other, and then we need to unload them from front to back. So we're creating procedures for all of that. We really have that nailed down right now. Feel very strong and good about our process for unloading buses into the building through our kiosks that take temperatures to screen students. The parent pickup, we're in a very good spot as well with our drop off in the morning. Very similar procedure. There will be a lot of staff on hand at both sites, escorting students, greeting students, following procedures, showing them through arrows and signage that is being created that will be color coded on how to get into the building. And we actually have maps already made up, and Mr. Lombardi will appreciate this. I'm kind of calling it our arrival dismissal playbook as former coaches. This is for our teachers to have very specific ways to do it, providing parents with very detailed explanations when needed. So you're not getting multiple messages. So it's very clear, very concise, and to the point to provide information. But we are keeping that as simple as we can and as normal as we can. We're still working on the dismissal procedures, but again, we're trying to keep it as close to normal processes as possible.
Okay. I want to kick to John a little bit because John, you're kind of the health and safety coordinator, and take it a step back. 2 reasons. A, just to review, UPK through 3rd graders are going to be arriving on campus on the 14th. Everybody else will be brought back when it's deemed safe. Those students will be on the hybrid model schedule, which will place them into 2 groups or cohorts. One group will be arriving, be coming to school on campus Monday, Tuesdays. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is a remote situation. And then the second group will be remote the first half per portion of the week. And then Thursday, Friday, they will be in person. But backing it up a little bit from arriving on school, John, there's some some screening procedures that families will have to do, and then there'll be some additional measures on campus. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, sorry. I mean, everything that we're doing and trying to bring back kids safely and making sure that our staff and students are safe is, we're asking parents to understand what the signs and symptoms are of COVID. So if your child is sick, please do not send them to school. We're asking them to take temperatures before they come into the building, but we will also be taking temperatures as kids come in as well, just as a precaution to double check, to make sure that we're keeping everybody safe. So it's relying on parents as well to understand the signs and symptoms and keep their child at home. But we will also be screening them as they come through the door as well. Sometimes kids might wake up and they might feel fine, and then they get to school and then they don't feel very well. So they might have to go to an isolation room. The school nurse will look them over and then decide if they need to get sent home, and then recommending that they go and see their primary care physician, and then either get a note from their primary care physician, or maybe they might possibly have to get tested after that. But again, just those procedures to keep everyone safe. And we've been working hand in hand with the public health department to make sure that we're going through those guidelines and those procedures of how that would be handled. Everything that we're doing as far as keeping the desks 6 feet apart is to reduce the chances of spread or reducing the chances of kids getting sick. As long as we're following those protocols of wearing the masks, making sure that we're doing proper hand washing, and removing the mask from the side, not in the front, making sure we're washing our hands before we do that. The rates of exposure are low in our area, and the more that we can do to mitigate that, the better. Those are the precautions that we're putting in place. We want to get kids back on campus, and we want to keep kids back on campus. We don't want to have an outbreak and then have to close down. So as long as we're following those guidelines of 6 feet apart, the proper social distancing, hand washing, the rates of exposure are really low, and that's why those procedures are put in there to help protect our kids and our staff. And that's why, I know it's frustrating that, we're used to having 20 kids in a classroom, but unfortunately the space that we're giving, and to make sure that we keep everybody safe and we keep kids on campus, we keep those desks 6 feet apart. The elementary level, we can only get about 8 to 10 kids in a classroom. The high school level, we're able to get some of those classrooms up to 13 or 14, just because the room sizes are a little bit different. There's not cubbies in there like there are in the elementary school, so we can get a few more desks in there. But the high school level, that provides an issue because of the way our schedules are, and kids mix differently. They're going to go to a block scheduling up at the high school level to help reduce the number of transitions. So normally you would have 8 classes per day, but so at the high school level, they're going to go to a block schedule of 4 classes on Monday, would be like class periods 1 and 2. And then I believe it's 6 and 7 in the afternoon. And then it would flip flop on Tuesday. It would be 3 and 4. And then the other 2 afternoon schedule, other classes that they have. And that just reduces the number of times that there's transition. So that's one of the recommendations, is to try to reduce the number of transitions that kids have, making sure that we have flow patterns so that kids aren't face to face as much as possible, or the flow patterns are going, so we're reducing the chances of kids interacting and passing along anything that they might have. So that's kind of some of the things that we're doing on that end to help mitigate contact and the spread.
I'm going to share my screen once again and show that block schedule for a second here, because we did have a question about start times and such at this level. And I think families can see that, the expected start time and end time at the secondary level is 7 to 12 will be very similar to what it has been. They're still working on a variety of issues as well, transportation being one of them. But kind of in what John was just talking about, into the block schedule and the times, here's something a little bit visual that families can see. So good. John, also yesterday, and wearing your hat as athletic director a little bit, recently we're getting some word about athletics. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what might be happening?
I mean, as of right now, it's still, there's no high school athletics allowed, but the governor did release yesterday in his press conference that within a week, they're gonna release some guidelines or address the issue of what athletics might look like. So keeping our fingers crossed that we'll have at least some guidelines as far as not knowing and not being in limbo, and we can kind of start moving in the right direction with athletics as well.
Okay. Well, there's some movement on that end, and I'm sure when the governor makes an announcement, it'll provide more clarity as to what will happen, what will be required, and things going forward. Tammy, can you provide us an update with? I know you're reaching out to a lot of families, and trying to communicate with them, and can you tell us a little bit about where you are with that and how that's going?
Sure. I mean, I've reached out to a number of parents who have reached out to me to schedule that in-person instruction time for our consultant teacher, direct students, and our resource program students. And that is something that the department chairs in special education and all of the special education staff, whether it be teachers, the OTs, the PTs, the speech providers, social workers, counselors, whoever it may be, will be in contact with those parents for those check-in times, whether they're in remote or whether they're the on-campus in-person instruction time. So we're coordinating that through our office. I have some suggestions just based on some parent requests that I have received, and those providers will be working on those throughout the next few weeks to get information out to parents, hopefully by September 1st. But as we've stated before, the students who are in our 1211 and 1511 classrooms will be on campus 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, with Wednesday being a remote day for them. And those kids will, because they are the neediest of our population, will get as much as they can on those on-campus times. And if they have the OT, the PT, or the speech or counseling services, we will try to see them when they're on campus as much as possible.
Great. And I know I'll probably just save you a few words. You still encourage families to reach out. I'm sure everybody on the panel reach out to us with questions, call administrators. We have a staff directory on the website that parents can search. We have the reopening schools at midlakes.org email that families can still submit questions to, and administrators and staff are responding to those questions daily as they come in, as soon as they come in. Some things are, sometimes a little bit more difficult to get at but sometimes they're eye-opening for us to kind of help as we plan for
And
us.
as I've said before, if parents didn't hear from me or if they didn't hear from the principal, just double team us. Give us both a call or give us both an email, however you need to do it. We'll get to your request as fast as possible.
Great. So, and Tammy, you provided some clarity around the special education schedule. Matt, maybe you can go into the E&L students.
Right. So the guidance dictates that if we're not able to bring all students back on campus to start the year, that we prioritize what they describe as our most vulnerable student populations. That includes our youngest students, and that's clarified in the guidance, our special education students, as Tammy spoke to, and our English language learners. Now, I just want to, again, broaden this for a second, because I know there have been questions about why we didn't have 100% in-person option. And again, that goes back to the space. At 6 feet social distancing, which is clearly identified as the standard and the minimal expectation in the guidance. At 6 feet social distancing, it limits our classroom capacity. So 8 to 10 kids in an elementary classroom. Some of our secondary classrooms a little larger than that, but some of those class sizes are bigger too because of individual course offerings. For those of people who are doing the math and say, well, wait a minute, 8 to 10 kids in a classroom, the math doesn't work, with 2 cohorts. That's where, many parents have opted for 100% remote instruction. And then those students have been separated out and do not have to be factored in to the in-person instruction, and that has lowered our capacity, and that's why the 8 to 10 in a classroom works. So that's just really important for people to understand, that it's all of these pieces fitting together even allow us to abide by this guidance. But that third group that we're to prioritize for in-person instruction are English language learners, those students who are still adapting to the English language and local culture, and they are entitled to additional services to assist with that. So all of our English language learners will receive at least 2 days of in-person instruction. Some of them are already incorporated into the UPK through 3 hybrid model. Some of them are already incorporated into the 12-1-1 and 15-1 populations that Tammy talked about, but those in grades 4 through 12 who are part of neither of those populations will be scheduled for on-campus in-person instruction with their ENL teachers, a minimum of 2 days a week, and those schedules are still being worked out.
Great. How I understand it, and anybody on the panel can correct me if I'm wrong, but in terms of scheduling at either school, if a student is in a remote setting, they are to follow that schedule. So you have a block schedule at the high school that we just showed. That's kind of what your day is like. Chris, you seem like you got something.
I was just going to unmute myself. So it's interesting. I actually had to, when I say running from meeting to meeting, I had to run down here for this one because I was meeting with a group of teachers that were asking that very question about how does that look for us as remote teachers. And, when you look at those block schedules, those are lengthy periods of time. We're not expecting, it's important for parents to understand, we're not expecting a child to sit, any level student, to sit in front of their screen for a block, that long of a block of time. Those times will be broken up into instructional times for the teachers that will be limited and as stamina grows, with the kids and with the teachers. And as we work out groupings, those things will come together for us. But when you talk about, Todd, following that schedule, yes, we're going to follow those schedules for when we're engaging with different groups of students, but we're not necessarily with the remote learning going to be following those time periods and expect students to be engaging electronically all that time. They're going to have things to work on. They're going to be given direct instruction and assignments. There might be some group work happening in breakout rooms with Zooms and all different things. And the teachers, as they develop their toolboxes around this, things will get creative when they start seeing the different things they can do and different ways they can do it and working and sharing ideas together.
Yeah.
Because remember, nationally, this is happening. There's sites out there where teachers are sharing ideas all the time.
Right.
Yeah. And also to that point about screen time, depending on the grade level, the intent is to try to limit the younger kids to like a 30-minute individual Zoom session, and then a little bit more as you go up to 12th grade. So it's not, and it's also not a case, at least the intent is 30 minutes and 30 minutes and 30 minutes of Zoom all day. It's try to break it up in different ways. This is another question that came in. I know we've addressed this, I think, in maybe town halls in the past, Matt. Clear plexiglass dividers, you kind of see them separating kids and such. I know for classrooms that's not something that we're looking at because.
Right. So, people reference plexiglass and this is one of the unique frustrations or obstacles that we need to deal with as public school districts in New York State is we have very specific fire code regulations that we have to abide by. And actually, plexiglass which tends to be on the less expensive side, actually does not comply with the fire code. And we have to use a different material, a different clear material that's a polycarbonate material that is quite honestly pretty cost prohibitive. And for the number of desks to go three-sided with a barrier becomes an issue. And really, while barriers are an option, the 6 feet social distancing is more the standard for keeping students and staff safe. So, we will reevaluate that as we go. And we're constantly looking to improve our procedures. And if that becomes something that we have to look at, we will. But at this point, we're utilizing the social distancing as the best means of preventing the spread and keeping students and staff safe.
Gotcha. I'm jumping around a little bit on topics because we're, getting some questions in. So I just want to make sure we try to address as many as we can, as best we can. And one question that has come in is a little bit about internet service and signal boosters and you can kind of wrap in IT help on that. And I know we have the tech help at midlakes.org email that's still going to be used, where the district team, the IT department will be on hand to respond to those questions and get to those as well. We also, Khajiits, Matt, do you want to talk a little bit about the Khajiit units and
Right.
how that
So
works?
you mentioned a lot there. We did, as part of our first parent survey, ask for parents to identify whether or not they had reliable high-speed internet in the home, and reliable in the sense that can it support everybody in the home who needs to use it simultaneously. You may have internet in the home, but is it strong enough to support 2 or 3 or 4 kids all at the same time and a parent working from home? So we recognize that the standard for what is reliable internet is different home to home based upon the needs. Actually, as districts go, we had a very low percentage of families report that they don't have reliable internet, but we're working on a number of things. So to help those families, we do have the Khajiit hotspots available for families to support, or to add to or provide internet access, but they are based off of a cell signal. So we recognize there's areas of our district that have unreliable cell service. So that wouldn't necessarily be an option. So we actually have a meeting later this afternoon with a local provider. We're constantly looking at options for expanding internet access in our community. Not necessarily something that the district can be the primary player in that, but we have just an amazing community and a lot of resources right here in Phelps and Clifton Springs who are reaching out to us, willing to be resources and trying to work with us to find solutions. So we're going to help families navigate the internet access piece the best we can, and it's going to look different based upon a family's circumstances. You also brought up the tech help piece. I do want to point out, I know a lot of families struggled in the spring with the iBoss filter on the iPads, and I know that our tech department is developing a workaround on that, and in making it easier to navigate so that that's not a barrier. Also, we plan to post on the website a whole menu of resources and support materials for families, so that, certainly we encourage them to email. I think it's techsupport@midlakes.org, but they may be able to troubleshoot and self-solve some problems by using resources that are available. And we'll try to make those available in print form as well. So we realize that with the increased reliance on technology, the remote learning, that support piece is going to be really important. We're also looking to streamline the number of instructional technology tools that we're using, so that families can lean into and become proficient in a few key platforms and tools rather than being pulled in a million different directions. I know that was a frustration in the spring. So like Seesaw is going to be the designated learning platform K-6. Schoology is going to be the designated platform 7-12. But then we're going to try to narrow the lane on the number of individual online learning tools so that there's predictability, consistency, and proficiency with a smaller array of tools.
Gotcha. The remote learning, and I know we did a survey previously. District put out a survey, kind of trying to gauge families' interest in full remote instruction. If families want to vie for that option, can they still choose that option? And once they've decided one of the options, what are the deadline, elementary or secondary level? Like, how long do they have to be in those
Right. So that survey went out a couple weeks ago. We've gotten quite a few. If there are families who are still considering that, we ask them to please let us know as soon as possible, because that information does get factored into creating the cohorts. It is easier to pull somebody out, a student out of in-person and put them into remote than it is vice versa. And that's why we're asking for minimal commitments of the first one trimester at a time for K-6 families and 1 quarter at a time for 7 through 12 families, once we're into the hybrid model of 7-12. But because there might be space constraints, if a family who's opted for 100% remote then wants to bring their students back on campus in the hybrid model, we need to be able to plan for that and to make sure that we have the space in our classrooms to accommodate those additional students. So that's why we're limiting it to quarters and trimesters, so that we have the opportunity to plan and make sure that we make the adjustments necessary to be able to accommodate those students.
Okay. I know the governor, he's been giving out a lot of guidance on a lot of things, and I'm sure if we have to pull back to full remote instruction, he will probably lead that. Matt, is there anything on your end as sort of the district superintendent that you're looking at, rates, any information to say, hey, we can either open more or we need to pull back some for whatever reason?
The pulling back is an interesting one. Certainly, if it's related to infection rates regionally, then that's going to come either from the Ontario County Public Health Department recommendation or from the state level. The governor does have that authority to close districts in a region or statewide based upon infection data or really any other factors. So if it's related to the evolution of COVID-19, then that's probably not a decision that's going to be driven by us. Other factors internally, we're looking at, again, I keep talking about constraints. Staffing, space, time are things as we monitor how things are going with the limited number of grade levels that we're starting with. We're going to see how that affects the pacing of whether we can bring more grade levels back, or hopefully not, but whether we need to go back in the other direction. We're really hoping that that's not necessary. In terms of, again, you've pressed me on this every time. in terms of the pacing and timeline for bringing more students into the hybrid model on campus. That's going to be done observationally based upon our capacity to support all these new procedures that have to happen during the day. We're starting with few grade levels so that, because we'd rather bring more grade levels on than bring too many to begin with and then have to send a grade level home and inconvenience those families who've already made plans. We want to make sure that we can safely and adequately support all the things it's going to take to have kids on campus, from those arrival and dismissal procedures, the added time with busing, the extra cleaning, the health screenings and temperature checks, the differences in how we feed students. There's just so many things that we normally do that are going to be done differently, that are going to require us to shift K-12 non-instructional staff down to the elementary level to support UPK through 3. And we just don't know how that's going to go until we start doing it. If things are going really well and everybody's cooperating, things are going smoothly, then we'll be able to add grade levels more quickly. If we're hitting roadblocks and issues that have to be resolved, then it might take a little longer.
Gotcha. I'm going to plug a couple things really quick. We mentioned midlakes.org, where we put all our documents. We have a reopening Midlakes tab on the website, and we continue to post information there. There's a reopening schools at midlakes.org email where families can submit questions. And I bring this one up again because I see the conversation here regarding IT connectivity issues. Tech help at midlakes.org is the dedicated email for families that they can use to get some help on their support and devices. I believe we talked about it recently as well, that there will be updates that will be sent wirelessly, shot to the phone, shot to the devices that will be going out soon. We talked a little bit about scheduling. I wanted to talk a little bit about thermometers. Midlakes PTO has made a generous donation for thermometers for district families. Have we got any clarity around or made any decisions on when those and how those might be distributed, or how that might work out yet? Are we still working through some of those details?
Chris, you want to talk about overall supply and paper material distribution and how the thermometers might be worked into that?
So as Todd said, the working with our nurses, our staff, we realized there might be a need to provide thermometers to families that don't have one, or if we have a child that needs to be monitored, to be able to have that as a resource. Also with our supplies, I didn't pull it up in front of me just now, but our PTO, our connection with the Rotary Club, as well as some various other groups, have donated supplies for our K-6 students. All the supplies for our K-6 students will be provided. So right now we're developing a distribution plan. And we're looking at not just creating a one-day distribution plan. We're looking at the calendar, trying to figure out, okay, as we go forward, we want to get all these supplies out to our families, but we also want to get learning materials to our families. And how do we do that on a regular basis so families can plan accordingly to know that there is a definite need for paper materials, whether it be a book. Some families have advocated for more paper materials than others, and we want to have a plan to get that out to. So that's currently being looked at, and we're thinking Wednesdays might be a great day to be able to facilitate those pickup points. That will be we're looking at a one-directional procedure too, unless it's something that is not a consumable that we need back, like a book. And we'll work out procedures for that. But we're looking at getting paper materials into families' hands and then having pictures somehow taken with devices and sent back to us electronically to avoid, to keep those distances and safety, as in our forefront of our procedures.
Great. one thing that has come out crystal clear to me, just kind of moderating this in terms of advice for families and parents, is start good practices now. And that could be wearing a mask. Some people have suggested when you're watching a movie or having your child's playing a video game or a TV show, wear the mask just to get them used to having that covering on. But also start getting them used to a daily schedule, a regular schedule that helps them just kind of get into things like that. The other thing I wanted to go to, we're talking a little bit about thermometers, which are important. Also face masks at the secondary level. There's a fundraiser going on. Mr. Bay Rossi, I'm going to kick it over to you. Can you tell us a little bit about the fundraiser, and do you know like the timeline of when that might start, or and go on?
I can. Sorry.
Awesome.
It's been a difficult morning. I've been sick.
Okay.
So we ordered the face mask. It's a 14-day turnaround. We should have the face mask within the next week and be able to start distributing the face masks once they come in. We ordered both adult and children face masks for everybody to be able to distribute them to all of our community members.
So those masks, those are supplemental. Those are a choice. It is a fundraiser for the senior class. We will be providing face coverings and other necessary PPE as per job description to our employees. And then while the primary responsibility for student masks will be with the family, we will have disposable masks on hand in every location to recognize a student may forget one, or it might become soiled or break. So we will have extras. The fundraiser is an additional opportunity. It's another way to show Midlakes pride and to keep each other safe through the wearing of face masks. So that's just an additional opportunity, and we hope to be able to support our senior class in that way.
Awesome. And we'll certainly put information on social media and the website as more details become available. One question that I wanted to get to, and I think it was emailed in over the last day or so, teachers, and they're vital to making make everything work. But will there be teachers dedicated to just remote learning and some in person? Will the teachers, a third grade teacher, do both at the same time? A little color around that, perhaps, Matt?
Yeah. So at this point, we will not be using dedicated teachers for remote instruction. Remote students will be assigned to a teacher along with the students in the hybrid model for in-person. So whether students are in the hybrid model and on their remote days, or whether they're 100% remote, they'll have the ability to connect through technology with the in-person instruction going on in the classroom. So we are not, there's a number of staffing implications to that would make that difficult. We realize that our staff will need support in training and in how to navigate in-person and remote students simultaneously. But whether they're remote or in person, students will be assigned to the same teachers, and then the teachers will be using a number of methods and technology supports to make that instruction available to both groups. And we're we hope to use recordings also, so that students, whether they're in person or remote, will have the opportunity to go back for reinforcement, to view instructional videos. Or we also recognize that students in the remote setting, there might be day-to-day reasons that prevent them from joining live. And we want to offer that flexibility to students and families so that they can engage in instruction and show that engagement and attendance that we can track and are required to track at times when they're able to do so.
Last night we had the school physician on, and we talked a little bit. She talked a little bit about signs that parents can look for in their children, sort of the warning signs. You know, they're not engaged, they're not. Um, I have a couple listed here. You know, one of the things that she mentioned was changes in engagement, or they're feeling isolated a lot. Do you have strategies for trying to pull that student out of that sort of that feeling? What can parents, families do to kind of help their student not feel isolated, not feel, you know, this is uncertainty leads to a whole host of things, you know?
Sure. So a big part of our plan is the social emotional supports for our students, whether they're in person or remote. And this is a great example of where it's going to take a partnership between the school and our families, because they're going to see things, especially if the kid is in a 100% remote setting. The family's going to see signs possibly before we do. We may see lack of attendance or lack of engagement, and that's one really important reason why we'll be tracking that data, so that our PSO staff, our teachers, our administrators can identify those students who are showing that lack of engagement and reach out to see if there's something, you know, bigger or more serious at play. Our PSO staff will be making contact and monitoring, our school counselors, social workers, psychologists as well. But yes, we encourage families to monitor their students for signs of isolation or being withdrawn or feeling sad all the time. You know, we understand that this has been a difficult situation, and I mean the pandemic in general, for all of us since March. And then to add any anxieties that come with the return of school, whether it's in person or remote, we realize that those needs are about to increase. So we want families to keep an eye out for any changes in behavior at all in their children, and to reach out to our principals or PSO staff so that we can intervene and provide the right supports.
Okay. Anybody else on the panel have anything to add to what Matt just said?
I think it's important, especially if they're 100% remote, just to make sure that they're tuning in, and that when the teachers do different breakout sessions and things like that. Some of the biggest feedback we've got from students in the spring is they missed that group work and that time to interact with their peers. So if they can join in any of those breakout sessions, that some of those, you know, some of the stuff that we've purchased with the licenses with the Zoom, that they can do those breakout sessions so that the kids can interact with each other and do group work. Things like that will help with some of that.
And Dr.
The good thing is we've kind of started, this year we were going to roll out some socio-emotional supports and different initiatives there. So we were ahead of the game a little bit there. And once the kids come back, we have some of those things in place now to help support those kids as they come back.
Right. And you know, as Dr. Fryer mentioned last night, you know, the importance of a schedule and a routine. And this is one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we received from the spring, because we took a very relaxed, unstructured approach because everything was so new to everybody, and we didn't want to penalize any students for different family circumstances. We just took a softer approach. But that lack of structure and that lack of routine, the feedback we got was that it made it more challenging for students and families. But it can also lead to those feelings of being withdrawn or that tendency to isolate. So as Dr. Fryer said, it's really important for students, even when they're 100% remote, to be getting a good night's, to be getting up at the normal time, to be eating a good breakfast, getting rest, getting physical activity, following along with the schedule. We'll be monitoring that, because that, you know, as we track attendance and engagement, and as teachers notice students not engaging, they're going to be reaching out themselves or reaching out to our PSO staff and administration, who will then reach out to our families to see what's going on. You know, is there some extenuating circumstance, or is there something social emotional going on where we need to provide support? But we really encourage, and we know families are really trying to navigate, troubleshoot, and problem solve right now on how to deal with the lack of childcare caused by remote learning. but to the extent possible, through collaboration with neighbors, extended family, other families of grade level peers, to do their best to provide that structure and routine for their students. And if we can assist in that, we will.
Okay, great. Tammy, I'll go to you. Just in terms of advice for families, parents, as they head into the next couple weeks as school begins to start, what would you suggest to them to help their students start the year?
And I think one of the biggest things that was mentioned last night, and you mentioned a few minutes ago, is just have them get back in a routine. Making sure kids are to bed early, making sure that they have a routine in the morning to get up. And one of the things I mentioned, it doesn't matter how old the child is. So, children still need structure and routine. And I think last night I used the example of a 10th grader. And I could use any grade level for this example, but kids, especially high schoolers, do need those reminders from parents and the expectations that they're expecting them to do school remotely until that we can get them back on campus. And those text reminders or those situations that the parents have to work in which they're sending messages to their students or their children that they're still expected to do school. And however we can partner with them, whether it's more check-ins with our PSO staff or others of us connecting with those families, we'll do that. Just reach out and tell us that. But please get them back in a routine, and we'll go from there.
Okay. How about you, Chris? Any advice for families?
So, my advice is, and this is advice for, I think, all of us, for myself included, challenging ourselves to find positive, challenging ourselves to not get stuck in the negative, because we set, while we're, Tammy's advice, Dr. Fryer's advice about setting schedules, our students feed off of us as well, and our example of finding the positive. And in this charged environment we're existing in right now, whether it's politics, whether it's school, all these pieces with the pandemic, challenge yourself to find positive every day. Find the silver lining in our situations we face, and focus on that, and work. And the negative things will work themselves out. And there's things inside our control and things outside of our control. And I'm challenging myself every day to do just that thing and find those positives and feed off of them.
Great. Frank, how about you? Any advice for families or even students?
Yeah, I would say that, the biggest thing is for them to stay engaged. One of the things that we talk about, in all of our committee meetings is about engagement for students. And we need them to stay engaged in the educational process. So stay engaged with your teachers, stay engaged with everything that's going on. And parents, I would say stay engaged with what your children are doing so that you can know what's going on. So make sure that you know what's going on. Make sure that you know what your students are doing. Students, make sure that you're connecting with your teachers, and you'll be fine. And that's the most important thing.
Great. Matt, we're about an hour here. Is there anything else that you want to share with families?
Yeah, this continues to be a work in progress. So, we wanted to do these 3 town hall meetings this week to provide clarity as much as we can at this time, at this stage of the planning process on our reopening plan. But please understand that it is a living process and will continue to evolve. So continue to reach out to us through the reopening schools email address, monitor the website. There is a wealth of information there. And if you take the time to navigate the different sections, there are embedded links for schedules, as you've shown, Todd. and other resources. Things are going up daily in some cases, in some sections. These committees are really working hard. The administrative team is trying to flesh out as many of the details as quickly as possible. We know families need that information, so we're moving as quickly as we responsibly can so that the information's accurate. But continue to monitor it as major changes come about. If they come about in the plan, I will be communicating those through our Blackboard Messenger system. As we get closer to school, you may see more town hall opportunities. If we're seeing a lot of the same questions on the reopening schools email address, then we may take that opportunity to have a quick town hall. It may not be a full panel. It might be me and Todd, or we'll see who's relevant at that time. We know that the administrators are going to get increasingly busy as we get closer to having staff come on campus and closer to having students return to instruction. But we will continue to share information. We'll continue to provide opportunities to collect information. And in the meantime, again, as everybody has said so many times, when in doubt, call or email. Don't hesitate. You're not bothering us. You're helping us, because you may be asking a question that somebody else is hesitant or afraid to ask. And, or we may have missed something. Again, everything about everything we do is changing to some degree. And we may overlook a detail. I can't rule that out. And quite honestly, it's likely to happen. So our community, our parents, our students can help us by pointing out those things, those lingering questions or gaps in information that we've yet to address. So this is a community effort. It's a collaborative effort. We know it's first and foremost our responsibility, and we know that. We take that seriously, but it's a collective responsibility too. It's a partnership that we want to continue to build, and we invite parents and families to be part of that partnership.
Great. With that, I'll just reopening schools at midlakes.org. If we didn't get your question today, please use that email. Send it to us. Be sure to check out the Midlakes Schools Facebook page, the midlakes.org website. You can follow us at Midlakes Schools on Twitter, Instagram, and I'm sure we'll be sending out more information regarding summer supply lists, cohort information, all that stuff that comes out about this time of year, usually sooner, will be out very soon from what I gather. So I'd like to thank those who have participated online, who've joined the conference call and have asked questions, and also thank you to each of the administrators here today on our panel. With that, we'll say, hope you have a good day, and thank you for participating.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.